What's up, Duke fans, and welcome to another episode of Duke Blue Central here, breaking down Duke's unfortunate loss at North Carolina in the Dean Dome, a game where Duke was not able to come out on top here, round one of the famous Duke-North Carolina rivalry. I know we're a few days late to break down this game, but just didn't have any time or energy to record right after the game. We all know how much energy those games take out of fans. But didn't have time to record after that, and then a couple things got in the way. Here and there. Couldn't record it earlier. As I'm recording this, it is late Tuesday night, and actually UNC just picked up a loss at home against Clemson. So maybe I should just wait all the time and just not do pods. Continue the bad vibes and the bad luck heading towards the Tar Heel way. But that is a massive loss actually for UNC. This would mean that I believe it would mean if the rest of the team, if Duke and UNC were to go undefeated at the end of the year, or towards the end of the year, I think that game at Cameron, Duke UNC, would determine who won the ACC regular season championship. Now, obviously, we have a lot of basketball left to go. I think Duke has, I believe, 10 or so games before we get there. We do have a pretty favorable schedule until then. Up until then, we play Notre Dame tomorrow, Wednesday, play Boston College. Wake Forest, going to be a tough game, but it is at home. We go at Florida State, at Miami. I have to think Miami, even with their recent struggles, are going to shoot the ball well against us and play well against us like they typically do. Play at Wake Forest. That can be a dangerous game. Then you finish out the year against Louisville at home. You play Virginia at home. They're the team, I think, in second place right now in the ACC, even though they have the same amount of losses as Duke has. They've just played, I think, 2 more ACC games, which is a little strange. Then we play at NC State. NC State always going to be a tough place to play for Duke. I don't know what NC State takes before they play Duke at home, but that's going to be a tough one. And then we go to North Carolina. So, but I would say, that's compared to what we just went through with Clemson, Virginia Tech, North Carolina, kind of all back to back. We've got a pretty favorable next few weeks here, I think you would say, for Duke fans, especially for Duke, for the team, especially coming off a loss at UNC, one where they're going to really want to get back after it, I think, as fast as possible. So yeah, let's break down this game though, and honestly, guys, it's like there are a lot of Duke Twitter. I felt like was on fire after this game. So maybe it's good that I've waited a few days to kind of reflect on the game as a whole. But maybe I'm in the minority here in not feeling like the sky is falling on our season because we lost this. I just feel like I felt leading up to this game Duke was going to lose. And look, you always have a hope you're going to win, but a big part of it is we swept them last year. The sweeps don't happen super often. Most of the time in this rivalry, you win a game and you lose a game. Typically, you'll win your game at home, you lose one on the road, or you'll drop your first one at home, you really get up for the second game, you win on the road. But most years, this rivalry splits 1-1. That's why, look, when they talk about this rivalry being the best in sports, I agree with that assessment, and I think it's like that for a reason. And a big part of it for me is that they always break down the last 100 matchups of these teams, and it's like I think right now Duke might be 52-48 or something, or like 51-49. It is almost split down the middle, which just goes to illustrate the points. Most years, you're going to win one and you're going to lose one. And it pretty much doesn't matter the records and things like that. I know this game was very important in terms of standings and all that, although it does help Carolina picking up a loss today. But this was a rivalry game. This is a Duke-Carolina game. And I think had you told most Duke fans Duke was going to score 84, I think I would have felt okay about the outcome. Duke typically, when we score this season, when we've scored that much, typically a good result for us, I believe. We hold teams to lower than 80 points a game. Certainly, we might be hovering around close to 70. I'd have to really look up the stats on that. Don't have that prepared. But Duke is a good defensive team this year. Felt like it would have been good, especially if you would have told me how Duke would have defended R.J. Davis throughout the game. Now, he did end up scoring 17, but that was on 5 for 14 shooting, and a lot of those points came at the very end of the game where the game wasn't over, but it would have taken a miracle for Duke to get back in it. The meat and potatoes of this game, R.J. Davis was contained mostly by Tyrese Proctor, who that was his pretty much, I think, maybe the only thing Proctor is going to really be able to take away positively from this game is how well he guarded R.J. Davis. And that's no disrespect to Tyrese, one of my favorite players on this team, one of my favorite players to watch in college basketball. But we'll talk about him in a minute and his performance. But the big overarching things from this game, the big takeaways, is just that the turnovers just killed Duke. And I don't want to make it sound more simple than it is. But if you take away the Duke turnovers in this game, we turned the ball over 11 times. I don't know how much we're averaging, but it's significantly less than that. Less than 7, I believe. This game is drastically different if Duke doesn't turn the ball over the way they do. I got the box score in front of me. UNC was able to score 19 points off turnovers, 16 fast break points, 19 points off turnovers. In a game that Duke ends up losing by 9, I mean, that box score speaks for itself. You give up 19 off turnovers. Now, sometimes that can be a little deceiving because, it's not a total flush of, hey, UNC would not have scored all of those 19s, but it felt like they capitalized on nearly every turnover Duke was committing and was able to get an easy basket on the other end. Non-contested jumper layups and ones. I don't know if they had any transition threes. I don't recall any, but there's a couple and ones that turned into 3-point plays, and you have to think that Duke had a better shot of defending them in the half court than they did on those easy turnovers. When you look at this game, the way Duke shot, I think most people were worried about getting slammed on the boards by UNC. We lost the rebounding battle by 1, 34-35. And even like offensive rebounds, they were, let me pull it up here. They were able to get 9 offensive, but Duke got 7. So even in the offensive boards, they were +2 and only +1 for the whole game. That might have been the area I was worried about the most coming up against against UNC. They're an elite rebounding team, a team that always stresses rebounding, except for last year's team. But we held our own on the boards against them, and I've heard a lot of people talk smack about the effort of Duke, and I do think the effort was lacking, and the kind of the intensity and the tenacity for this game was lacking. I actually think that showed up more in the passing game than it did in the rebounding game. Duke was out-assisted in this game 18-8, and that is a really big margin. Duke is typically a really good passing team, typically gets a lot of assists, but they were not able to pass the ball well today, and part of that is because of all those turnovers we had. But they were not getting into a rhythm offensively. They weren't sharing the rock. They were playing selfishly. These are all things that the players said post-game, too. If you haven't given Jeremy Roach's post-game interview a talk, it's a worth listen. He really owned the loss and said they were playing selfish and all that. And that's coming from a guy who I thought had a really good performance out there. And then another thing that went wrong for Duke was our three-point percentage. And I want to give some credit to Carolina here because they do statistically defend the three very well. I don't know. I'm still just convinced some of that has to be smoke and mirrors because I felt like Duke had plenty of chances to hit open threes, and they just didn't make them. But there's something to be said for statistics and how bad teams shoot against them from the three this season. Duke only converted 26% of their threes. It went 3 for 8 the first half, even worse, 2 for 11 in the second half, total of 5 for 19 on the game. Some of those totals: Jared McCain 2 for 6 from 3. Flip went 1 for 6. Roach was able to go 2 for 5. Nobody else made a 3 on the team. Mark Mitchell attempted 1. Caleb Foster attempted 1 that both missed. So look, not to make this loss seem more simple than it is. Everything can sometimes be more complicated when you're talking about basketball strategy. But if Duke is able to turn the ball over a couple less times and shoot their regular three-point percentage. I mean, I think we're shooting 37% on the year from 3. We had a really bad shooting night. I mean, if we're able to convert on some of these threes, turn the ball over a little less, I think we're talking about a Duke win. But that's the way these games go. Sometimes things happen that don't happen throughout the regular year that the teams don't do. Sometimes bad shooting teams turn into good shooting teams. And for Duke this time, a good three-point shooting team turned into a bad one in the face of an intense rivalry. Another thing that went wrong for Duke was Harrison Ingram on the other side for the Tar Heels. Harrison Ingram played 39 minutes of this game. All of them were felt. He went 8 for 12 from the field, including shooting and making 5 three-point baskets, 5 three-pointers. And on top of that, grabbed 2 offensive rebounds, 11 defensive for 13, and even had 4 steals in the game. I mean, a monster stat line from Harrison Ingram. Perhaps the best game of his college career. It's definitely the best game in his UNC career. I guess I'd have to go back and look at his transfer stats but I think he would say this is the best performance of his career in a game like this. Sometimes you strategize to let the other guys beat you. We implored, now Harrison Ingram and Leaky Black are not the same player, but we implored a similar strategy against Leaky Black both games last year where we said, Leaky is going to shoot, we're going to let him shoot, and if he beats us, great. And he didn't beat us and couldn't beat us in both games, no matter home or away. Harrison Ingram, we were not just letting shoot out there because he's a good three-point shooter, but I think admittedly they were more concerned with guarding R.J. Davis and even Armando Bacot, and were okay with Harrison Ingram having the ball in his hands more than those two guys, and he really burned us. Really burned us. Great game from him. A couple of the other guys coming off the bench. Seth Trimble had 10 points. Like, man, I admittedly I hadn't watched every minute and every game of Carolina basketball this year, but I don't remember Trimble coming off of the bench and having that much of an impact this year. Just they got a lot of contributions from a lot of guys. Like I said, Davis was contained, I think, for the meat of the game. Finished with 17. A lot of that came late. Bacot had a great game. 25 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists. Great game for Bacot, who had been on a little bit of a skid here, but you knew he was going to wake up for the Duke game, especially it being his last Duke game in the Dean Dome. And he boldly stated after the game that the ACC runs through me, which is an interesting quote considering some of the statistics. Let's take a journey together and read this from my friend. Shout out to at Duke Wisdom. Great guy, great account to follow. He retweeted Armando Bacot's quote that the ACC runs through me. All of this is his stuff. I'm just going to read you this tweet. He just said, so this is a retweet on the Bacot quote from the Field of 68. Armando Bacot said, "At the end of the day, the ACC runs through me." So UNC number of ACC regular season or tournament titles from 2000 to 2003, a whopping 0. And UNC's NCAA tournament seeds during Armando Bacot's career. So this is their 4 seeds since he'd been there. 2020, they would have probably missed the tournament, but it was COVID. 2021, they were an 8 seed. 2022, they were an 8 seed. 2023, they missed the tournament, and his record against Duke is 5-5. So there's some interesting stats there. Also, he's never won an ACC Player of the Year. I mean, very interesting quote to say that the ACC runs through him. I'm not a guy who, I guess you might be able to tell through part of it, I'm not a guy who harbors a lot of hate for the UNC players. I get into the rivalry as anybody else does, but I have no ill will towards any of these UNC players. I'm not preying on their personal downfall. But look, if you're gonna say a quote like that, you got to be ready for the meme replies of everybody telling you perhaps that you haven't accomplished as much as maybe you think you have. But I harbor no hate in my heart for Armando Bacot, and he had a great game against Duke, so he can definitely have the laugh there if he so wishes. But we keep receipts. We keep receipts, and that's all I'll say. We'll see him again. We're gonna see him again once, maybe twice this year. So keep holding on to that. I'm sure the Duke players have seen that quote and will take that quote to heart next time we see big number 5 out there on the court. But I want to jump to the Duke side a little bit and talk about some guys' individual player performances. I have 3 guys that really stood out for me as having great games, and that was Jeremy Roach, Kyle Filipowski, and Jared McCain. Now, what I find interesting here is Flip was really getting flamed online for having like a horrible game. Now I know like McCain did lead us in scoring, but Flip finished with going 9 for 17, 22 points, 5 rebounds, only 2 turnovers and a block. Like now look, I guess what they were flaming him about is like you're expecting him to put up 25 plus in a game like this. But look, I mean that it's pretty wild that a guy like Flip can get toasted online for shooting 9 for 17 and scoring 22 in only 31 minutes. And a guy like McCain, like everybody is, and by the way, McCain had an awesome game, was the player of the game, but a guy like McCain is like heaped praise upon, as he should. Let me point that out, as he should. But he finished 9 for 18 with 11 rebounds, 1 assist, 23 points. So Flip had a point less than him in 7 less minutes, in 1 less shot. He did only finish with 5 rebounds compared to McCain's 11, which is nutty. And Flip's a bum, and McCain is Duke's savior. But that's the beauty of fans on Twitter, right? Is that we love calling guys out and holding guys to some artificial standard that each of us have just made up in our brains. But I thought Flip had a good game. I mean, he picked up some fouls as usual, but you can't be mad at a guy for finishing with 22 on 9 for 17. I'm just not. This is a good stat line. I don't care what you say. The reason Duke lost this game was not because Flip laid an egg and didn't show up. Like we turned the ball over 11 times, shot it 26% from 3. Now I will say, if you want to get pissed at Flip, the one thing I guess you could say was he was 1 for 6 3-point shooting and he missed 2 free throws. But like, are you gonna dog a guy for 2 free throws when he's a big man? Probably not, even though Flip shoots better than that. 1 for 6 from 3 is a little atrocious. I think, man, I felt like he was forcing it a little at times from deep, and it's just that he shoots a better percentage of that on the year. So I guess you could say his 3-point shooting didn't show up. But still, to have that kind of stat line and for us to be dogging the guy so much is pretty wild. And the other guy I think had a great game was Jeremy Roach. Shout out to Jeremy Roach as always, man. Just holding this team down. Went 9 for 16, so even 1 less shot than Flip. Did hit 2 for 5 on 3. Had a good 3-point shooting night. And finished with 2 assists as well. 2 turnovers for Jeremy. Well, 20 points. That's just like typical Jeremy Roach. Like he just had a great game. I wonder how healthy he is still. It just still feels like he's not quite as fast as he normally is. He's famous for that kind of like blow by quick layup. And it felt like they couldn't do that as much this game, maybe because he was limited. I'm not sure. But Jeremy Roach is such a crucial part to this team, and he had a great performance. It's hard to even break down his performance because it's just like it just feels like he does this every game. I don't like it's wild to think about. I know a lot of Duke fans on Twitter and everywhere else were talking about before this season, like, is it better if Roach leaves and we have McCain and Foster just running the guards? And it's like, look back now and it's like, man, that was so stupid. Like, Roach has been such an awesome player for us. He's crushing it from 3, like he's the captain, one of the captains. He's having an awesome season. So happy he's back. I guess he could be back next year with the COVID year. Wouldn't that be something? But hey, he can come back. I will never slander Jeremy Roach. He can come back and play for us for all eternity, for all I care. Great game. The guys with kind of like Mark Mitchell had a decent game, but I don't think he imposed his will as much as maybe he would have wanted to. He went 4 for 6, so good shooting with 11 points. Also was perfect from the line, had 7 rebounds. So, yeah, I guess, this is pretty good. 11 points, 7 rebounds, only missing 2 shots. Pretty good stat line for Mark Mitchell. But, it's hard when you're comparing them against guys who score 20, 22, and 23. You're just going to mention him a little bit lower. Caleb Foster has an interesting performance. He came out looking pretty good. He made 2 baskets early and then just did not get minutes the rest of the game. Let me read the minutes allocation here. Jared McCain got 38 minutes. Flip got 31. Roach got 36. Mitchell got 37. Proctor got 27. And then right after that, Foster had 19. Ryan Young had 10. Sean Stewart had 2. So that's eight guys. We played 8 guys this game. As I said in kind of my last podcast, I believe, I think we're seeing the 8-man rotation here that's going to carry us into March. I think the starting lineup we'll flip around Foster and Roach and Proctor and all that. But I think our March lineup, and we're seeing it kind of unfold before our very eyes, will be Jeremy Roach, Jared McCain, Tyrese Proctor, Mark Mitchell, Kyle Filipowski. And then Caleb Foster will be the first guy off the bench. Ryan Young will come in to relieve Flip and/or Mark when they get into foul trouble. And I think Sean Stewart has carved his way at least for single-digit minutes while one of those big guys are in too much foul trouble or we're just going for a different lineup. He's been able to carve out that kind of 8th man spot over the likes of guys like TJ Power and some of the other guys, even like Jalen Blakes, who I would not have picked. I thought Blakes. I don't know if Blakes is hurt. I haven't heard anything, but feels like he just fell off the planet all of a sudden. I don't know if he's played in the game recently. But, yeah, Sean Stewart just really carved out that role as that 8th man, which is good. I'm glad he's getting some minutes because, Duke had an incredible offseason this offseason with no guys transferring. I just think that might be unlikely again, especially with how many guys we have coming in. So I'm hoping Sean isn't one of those guys that feels like he needs to transfer. But, man, we're going to be having some interesting conversations in the offseason because Duke's got a lot of guys coming. And, man, we'll see. A lot of them are going to want to play, too. You talking about Cooper Flagg, you're penciling him in for 35 minutes a game. There's one starting spot gone. I'm still projecting Jared McCain and Caleb Foster to both come back. Figure those guys come back. McCain's going to play 30-plus minutes easy. I think Foster would also play about 30-plus. Maybe he'd play 20 to 25 minutes a game. There's another 2 spots. Are we convinced Mark Mitchell is going to leave? I'm not sure. He comes back. Anyway, we'll have those conversations later. But back to Duke UNC. And the one guy you can talk about on this for Duke this game that really didn't have his greatest game by the long stretch is Tyrese Proctor. Now, I do want to point out great defense on R.J. Davis. And a conversation I've had with a couple of my Duke and Carolina friends is perhaps he was so worn from guarding R.J. Davis, his offensive game just wasn't there. And while I think that could be the case, it's just not like Proctor was able to guard good guards last year and still have good offensive games. And if you want to be a great player, they're talking about Tyrese getting drafted in the first round, or at least they were. You can't have I was guarding a good player, so I scored 2 points. Like that, I love Tyrese, but that can't be the excuse, and I think he knows that too. He finished 1 for 6 shooting, didn't attempt a 3, had 3 rebounds, 3 fouls, 2 assists, only 1 turnover, but 2 points against UNC just can't happen. And once again, love Tyrese. No disrespect to any player, of course, but you just got to have more from him if you want to win this game. That's another thing you're talking about. He makes a couple of these shots, makes closer to his season average. We're talking about a win and not a loss potentially, probably. But I expect Proctor to rebound. maybe literally. But I expect Proctor to bounce back and play well. But it's starting to. If someone asked me the question, am I concerned with Proctor? It's just like it's really hard to answer that question because I don't know if it's they're telling him not to be as aggressive. I think he should play with more aggression on the scoring front. I know he's got the passing, but it just feels like sometimes he is so pass first that he forgets that, like, oh my gosh, like I am a great ISO scorer. Now everybody hates that term ISO ball, but look, if we can get Tyrese Proctor on a big or a tiny guard that can't defend, yeah, heck yeah, clear everybody else out of the lane and let Tyrese pull some Kyrie moves on him and either hit a step back three or blow by him and get a layup. Like sometimes that just works, and I want to see us put Tyrese in more of those situations. I want to see us play more pick and roll. I think Tyrese's pick and roll game, in particular with Mark Mitchell, is excellent, and it's something we just don't run as much. But I think Tyrese could just be a little more aggressive. When he gets the ball, he is so team first, which that's the guy you want. You would rather have to. I think you would. Well, I don't know, maybe not, but. I was going to say you would rather have to coach him to be more aggressive than be more passive. I don't know if that's the case, actually. I think you might actually want like a dog, and you have to rein him back in. I maybe. But anyway, I just think Shire has talked about it, or this whole season, of this Duke team playing cocky. And he purposely uses the word cocky even though it has a negative connotation because he believes if this team plays with that swagger, they get hot. And I think Proctor, we saw that all last year when he talks trash and he's playing like a cocky shooter, taking difficult shots, getting into the lane, taking those spin around fadeaway lane jumpers. Man, he turns into a different player. So let this game be a little bit of encouragement to Tyrese. Like, get your swag back a little. Be a cocky player. Talk smack. Not to a certain extent, but like talk some smack. Play good defense. Pass the ball well, yes. Play pick and roll, yes. But man, take that shot. He's shooting 6 shots in this game. He shot the same amount of times as Mark Mitchell. No disrespect to Mark, but Tyrese is a shooting guard, point guard. He should be up there in attempts with Jeremy Roach and Jared McCain. They shot the ball 16 times. Tyrese should be, if Jared McCain's shooting the ball 18 times, Tyrese should be shooting it at least, what, 12 to 15? Like, that's what I would say. Give him the ball more. Let him shoot the ball more. And part of that's probably on him, just to be aggressive and shoot. But he's the one guy you can really point out as having kind of a rough game. But anyway, I think I've got a lot of my thoughts here out on the pod. The point is, we got a lot of season left. The sky is not falling, Duke fans. I still have confidence in this team that they can beat anybody on their best day. I am getting more and more concerned that just like there are too many of these one-off performances where Flip picks up a lot of fouls, Proctor doesn't bring it, and then and in the tournament, it's one and done, you're out. You lose the game, you have a bad night, you go home, your season's over, guys leave to the NBA, and you got a whole new team next year. But look, I have felt better about Duke teams, and they've sucked in the tournament. Like last year's team, I felt like, man, hey, we really got a shot to go to the Final Four here, and we lose in the second round. 2 years ago with Paolo and Mark, we played like our best basketball at the beginning of the year, and then frankly just sucked in some games in February and January. We lost in the ACC Tournament Championship to a Virginia Tech team that wasn't that good. I felt like we were limping into the tournament, Coach K's last year. We were good enough to earn a 2 seed, so obviously we didn't just totally stink. But and then we turn it on and go on a run all the way to the Final Four. So you never know, man. You got to be able to create your own momentum as a team, and I do think this team is going to be able to do that in a way last year's team wasn't because of the age and the experience and know-how of what it takes to win in a tournament-style game. But yeah, that's all I got to say for this one. UNC unfortunately comes out on top. Big story for this one being turnovers and Harrison Ingram and Duke shooting bad from three. Combination to those three things equals a loss. But we get to see him again. But anyway, hey, it's been awesome talking with you again. Thanks you guys so much for tuning in to all the recent episodes. I love seeing you guys' comments on Twitter and everything. If you want to follow me over on Twitter, you can go to just search up Duke Blue Central over there. Love to interact with you, and we'll be coming back at you again soon as Duke faces the Notre Dame Irish Wednesday. So we are excited for that. Hopefully get back on track. But as always, see you guys. So thank you so much for listening, and go Blue Devils.